at all those beautiful faces on the screen. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Kubefirst live. And should I say, a proper episode this time because I'm back. Like, John is not left alone at the stairwell of the show. But yeah, no, that's going to be an interesting show. On top of that, on top of our amazing guest, which I will introduce right after, we have also a face that, you know, John and I seen a couple of times, mostly every day. But on the show, it's been what? Like
Eight.
at least 10 years.
Maybe 12. Yeah, it's been a
Maybe
little bit. It's been at least probably good 5 months, 6 months, I think, since I've been on a show. So it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was not my decision, but still happy you're on, happy you're on the show. No,
Well,
I'm
what's
joking.
funny, Fred, is you weren't supposed to be here, but that's we won't get into those details.
I know. Let me just complain on the live stream. I was supposed to be at the DevRel conference. That's a conference that I want to go since like forever, but I always had something else planned before. And for once, it was close to home. It was in New York. I had nothing else, like no other conferences, no speaking engagement. I was like, I can go. And I went to the airport yesterday, and it's basically what I've done with my days. Weather in New York was a little bit too much for most of the planes, and because of like the thunderstorm and stuff, like two of my flights got canceled, and I was not able to reschedule until like arriving on the second and last day of the conference. And I was like, okay, that's it. Like someone somewhere doesn't want me to go to that conference and wants me to be on the Kubefirst live. So this is where I am right now. So yeah, now a little bit sad I'm not at a conference, but happy to be here because for me too, it's been like at least a month and a half, if it's not 2 months, not being on the show. I was on vacation on our last show, and we didn't do one 2 weeks ago because there was it was the 4th of July week where we know like a lot of people's take times off during the week, and just busy with a lot of things too, which I cannot talk about yet, but there's a lot of good things coming at Kubefirst, so just excited to talk about that. But on that note, I'm being really a bad host. We have a guest with us, Abby. Welcome back to the show. How is life?
Don't treat me like just any old guest. We're like family. We're talking about this. We met in our inaugural KubeCons, Jared, John, and I. So I feel like we go way back. So no, very very happy to be back. Very happy to have a full house. It's nice to see you all.
It is. And for the people that don't know you, who are you?
Who am I? It's a big question.
I know.
I'm Abby. I am a American living in the UK. So I live in London despite this accent. I work for a company called Syntasso where we build Kratix, which is a framework for building your internal platforms. And I do a bunch of things around the community. So you'll see my face pop up in Team Topologies world as an advocate, CNCF world as a ambassador and a working group lead. And I do a few meetups and things. So I'm sort of around the house a bit. So
Doing a lot of things. So today we have a pretty exciting topics. We're going to talk about like internal developer platform, but mostly we're going to learn more about Kratix, which I think a little bit about. Seeing your T-shirt.
Yeah, this much, So
Been around the block with it.
Yeah, it's been fun. I can't believe it's been over 2 years now. I'm one of the founding engineers, so joined after the founders took on their pre-seed money, and it's been over 2 years now, helping to build the community and build the product and work with customers, and it's been fun. It's been a good ride. Just getting started.
Amazing. That's amazing. So, talking about IDP, like just before we jump into Kratix, maybe it would be nice to just like explain a little bit what it is for people that are not familiar with the term.
Oh, John, are you gonna take what IDP stands for?
Ooh, IDP. Which IDP are we talking about today? There's too many IDPs. When I was a kid, IDPs were identity providers. You remember that back the original IDP? And then everyone was just like, nobody uses that acronym. Let's repurpose it. And then we repurposed it for two different things in the same day. It felt like it was suddenly it's an internal developer platform for all of the platform engineers that are building platforms. And then about the same week, it was also an internal developer portal for platform engineers to build portals for self-service for their development teams. And there hasn't been a great way to untangle that mess. But yeah, my take on an IDP would be that it's basically the combination of tooling that you have to establish at your company when you're building software, when you're building technologies, and need to be able to conduct continuous integration and delivery of that application toward your production environment, whatever that production environment might need. A lot of times, particularly with this new Kubernetes-oriented infusion of platform engineering. Geez, is everything okay there, Fred? That was
like lightning in the
lot of
background.
flash.
Still alive.
All right.
Flash of IDP value.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
my
And
life-
Fred just had another great idea. We should pay attention to Fred for a second.
I disappear for a second.
No, so people are finding that particularly in cloud native, there's just a lot to get right. There's a lot of pieces involved, and platform engineering is a new discipline that kind of puts those pieces together in a more uniform way, and then you evangelize the use of those tools with your software team so that everybody can use a uniform methodology for delivering software and building software. So that's kind of my layman's definition of an IDP. Abby, how would you correct me if you could?
It's not about correcting, John. No, seriously, I'll tease out things that I heard, I guess, because you gave such a complete answer. So I think the point is that it has to do with your business. So I think that the key to an internal developer platform or portal or anything is that it's bespoke to what your business requires to be able to deliver software. So is that the processes around approvals and reporting and compliance? Is that the technical requirements of encryption and security and all those things? That's what makes it an internal developer platform and not just a platform as a service that you can buy off the shelf from a cloud provider, from a third-party provider, and so forth. There's no harm in the off-the-shelf purchase if you can. It just tends to be a limiting factor as companies grow and become unique, bringing unique value to the world, right? Because if you're selling something unique, you probably have something unique about how you work, and you want to bring that in. So, yeah, I would just pull that bit out that I think you mentioned. And then the only other thing I would say is that I think you talked about like bringing those things in and then evangelizing them for use. I think one of the really great conversations happening in the community around platform engineering today is around the like inversion of that. When you think about like a product in the world, it's people usually will do some sort of a small scale check of if their product brings value before they go completely out to market globally, right?
Yep.
And I think what we're finding with platforms is we're learning that lesson painfully in this way. And so what we're seeing is when we try and go with a complete kind of quote unquote global rollout, as in here's the platform, everyone must use it, getting people to adoption is a bit of a slog. And if you instead are focusing on what value is coming, what is being asked of the company to support moving faster in software delivery and value creation, and start just delivering on those and building up that platform, the adoption just drives the creation of that platform. So
Right on. Yep.
Yeah. 2 extra little tidbits.
Where are we going to go from there, Fred?
That's a good question. I have no idea. No, actually, I think now that we're on the same page about IDP, or at least like what we're gonna talk today, I would like to learn more about Kratix, because to be honest, I need to learn more about Kratix. I mean,
Everyone needs to,
because I was not supposed to be on the show. Like that was on my to-do list to like give it a closer look at some point. But because like this morning I was like, okay, I'm not going to the conference, and I didn't really have time like to go a little bit in depth. So I'm the perfect audience. I need an introduction about the product. Why should I care? Why is it useful for me? And how to use it. So I guess we can go from there. Unless I'm not sure. Jared, are you okay with that?
I'm great with that. That sounds perfect.
Awesome.
I don't even have to do anything on the keyboard today. This is incredible. I'm usually always keyboard
Actually,
first.
that's true.
But you still prayed to the live demo gods for me, right? Today, Jared?
Of course.
Okay. Thank you.
I
I
hope you did.
appreciate that.
Always.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I think it'd be really fun to talk a bit more. So I guess my recent preach about what platforms are and how they're like custom to your business and they provide value, they help your organization provide value quickly and more quickly, more efficiently, with less risk, because it's building in those requirements for your business. That's what I believe and we believe that platform engineering is at my company, and we're trying to enable people to build those systems with a lower cost for themselves. And so Kratix is a framework. It doesn't come with any built-in offerings. You don't install Kratix and then have a platform. What you have is the framework to build your platform your way, with a lot of helper tools and support in that. So what I want to do actually is show the like experience of working with a Kratix built platform before diving into the like how did we get there, because
Yeah.
I think sometimes when you start from here's the YAML code behind the scenes, it's like we forget that business value. And that's that point I made to you, John. Like, I think starting from why are we doing this thing and then building back to the tech is it's the way I like to think about things sometimes. So Fred, I think you might have my screen up. I don't know if yeah, cool.
It is
No,
now.
I do not work for Spotify. We are not building Backstage. We are using Backstage. So, first thing I just want to like talk about and show is that I think of platforms as having kind of three characters that sort of get involved with the use and the creation of the platforms. And the reason we're building these platforms is for users to get value from them, for app developers to move faster and be able to get what they need from the company to be able to create new applications and all those things. And so as an application developer, we often talk about what we need is access to something on like when we need it. We don't need to wait until someone gets back from vacation. We don't want to wait until someone picks up the ticket from the backlog and hopefully understands what I asked for. I need it right now, because right now I have the excitement to get working on it, the time to get working on it, and I want to go. And that's where portal side of IDP can be really nice, because it gives that kind of user experience to go get what they need when they need. And here we are in Backstage, and if you have used Backstage before, there's this idea of templates where you can create things. And so when I go to create, I can see that this platform right now has a pretty minimal amount of offerings. We will talk about how to get more in there. But we can right now do a deployment, so we can like basically create a running web application, and we can create a bucket or a blob store behind the scenes. And when I click on either of these, they let me see what I need to fill in to get access to it. And in this case of the bucket, like I'm exposed, the platform here is exposing a lot of information, right? It's exposing things like what your encryption strategy is. May or may not be something that I, as an application developer, understand or care about, but it might be. And the platform has decided to give me access to this. Gives me access to whether or not object locking, public, versioning, all sorts of things, which I can decide to use or not use, and then go on and create a request to the platform. This is going to create a bucket in the public cloud, which I'm logged into and we'll go see, but that takes a minute. So in the meantime, I'm going to go create also a deployment. And you can imagine this is like kind of the experience of your application developers. You're like, hey, you need an application. Here's your template for creating your application, and here's your template for getting the infrastructure behind the scenes. And you have to sort of piece those things together. You have to create the bucket with the right configuration, get the right URL, throw that stuff into your application, and you can get that working. And so I can create a matching Abby deployment here, and again, get access to things that I can set up. And this one might be a little bit more user-friendly for me as an application developer. Sure, I know what the name of my image is. I know what environment I want to speak to, right? This feels like something I should know about as an application developer. And I have limited options. I can't misspell it, right? I get drop down. That's pretty nice. I have the ability to kind of scale it, but I don't have to. That's not a required field. And I have to say what port I'm on. So again, I can go ahead and I can create that request. And so this is how my experience as an application developer looks when I'm using a platform that's providing things as a service. I get information, or I have the ability to get information back about what I have. So I can go in now and I can go look at the resources that have been created, and I can see that I have an Abby bucket, and I can see it's compliant, and I can see the name of the bucket. It's got some added sort of things put on it. And this is the information that the platform team has provided back to me about the bucket that should now be inside my AWS. Oh, Terraform's probably still running here. Let's see. Yeah, Terraform's still running. Just completed, I think. There it is. Acme org Abby. So now, like, I'm creating a platform. I can do things that are both here in the cloud, and I can also do things that are going to be running in Kubernetes. So I can go to my terminal here, and I can see that I'm running some pods, including an Abby pod here, an Abby deployment. That's cool. I got what I needed as an application developer. I didn't have to think about how I got it. And not only did I not have to think about how I got it, I got information in places I cared about. I had the information inside here in my portal, and I even got pinged in Slack that I had a deployment and where that gets deployed to. So this information that the platform has agreed is useful to the person who's making the request just gets pushed out to the person when and where they need it, which is like a really nice kind of experience.
So, I don't mean to interrupt your demo.
No, I'm done.
flow at
That's what
all.
I was gonna say. Is that an agreed nice experience? Was gonna be my next question. So
Yeah, I mean, like watching you and listening to you describe that scenario, particularly the S3 scenario, is a scenario that all the platform and cloud engineers know inside and out. All right, every developer has asked for one. You have opinions about, as a platform engineer, you have opinions about the security posture of that bucket, about the access to that bucket. You have to construct in my world, it's infrastructure as code, right? You just write some Terraform, and you could just keep it as a flat S3 bucket, just the way that the AWS or whoever provider makes available to you. And you can just say that you would like an AWS S3 bucket and just start hydrating a whole bunch of variables. But when you're a platform team and you're trying to enable your application developers to be able to self-service and create S3 buckets, now all of a sudden you have a choice. You can either document the way to create S3 buckets and cross your fingers and find out later that they're not going to read it, or you can build a Terraform module, right? And the Terraform module has been the first line of defense for platform teams to enable self-service for those developers. But it's because the module allows you to hide the things that you want to handcuff your end user to, and expose to that developer the fields that maybe you want to allow them to voice their opinion on, about whether it's dev or prod, about whether it's public or private, whatever the things are that you want to unlock for them. Now, watching you go through that demo with Kratix, it feels a lot like a user interface to like a Terraform module. And I'm unclear a little bit on like whether that's just how that works, and that's, or is it because you chose Terraform for this demo in the framework and it didn't have to be Terraform, it could have been something else. Can you explain a little bit about just sort of how that's constructed?
Such a good question. So absolutely, I think most people are gonna quickly jump to their infrastructure as code tool of choice, and Terraform or OpenTofu is a very popular one. So is Crossplane, it's a great option, but so is other tools. Like you might find yourself using Pulumi or Ansible even, and things, those configuration tools.
Yep.
And what we find that with our kind of ethos with Kratix is that we aren't here to tell you what the right tool is. We're here to enable you to have a consistent interface for your users and a consistent home for all the solutions you have to support. Because I've been at sort of mid-sized companies for most of my career, but I've also consulted with quite large, like global, top 50 companies. And even in those mid-sized companies, I didn't have a single solution. I was working on, Ansible for the things that were on VMs. I was working on Terraform in the cloud. I was working on all sorts of different scripting languages and everything in between. And so every time we talked about bringing another tool on board, it was like, well, which part of our ecosystem can this work with? And Kratix can work with literally everything. It can manage mainframes. We have that conversation with customers right now. It can manage edge devices. It can manage Kubernetes. It can manage clouds. It can manage anything, and it can run any code you want. So it's just running code behind the scenes in containers. So you want to run your Ansible, throw it in a container. You want to run your Terraform, throw it in a container. And so, so Terraform happened to be the solution here, and you will see a lot of similarities to a Terraform module. But you'll let me monologue slightly longer.
Of course.
I wanted to, one of my this one gets people mad. I'm sorry if anyone's listening gets mad at me here, but I love Terraform modules as an infrastructure as code option. I think that they do a lot of really good things. I know they have their pain points, but I think they're really great. But they, as an interface to end users, start to fall down for me because I don't think they're actually an API. They might be a contract of like you can use these fields and you can use these things, but there is a tight coupling between the implementation and the use of that contract, which in my opinion starts to drive away from that API idea where I can work independently of the other side. The whole point of an API is I have a contract with you and you can go off and do your thing and I can go off and do my thing. And as long as we both adhere to that contract, we're good. And if you want to bump the version of that contract, I need to still be able to talk to the old version and or be alerted to the changes in the new version.
Right.
That's just not possible in code's your interface. When Terraform modules and values files are your interface, like if I want to change from using Terraform to using Lumi or Crossplane, like my users would have to change their behavior.
Right. Right.
Like just as a user experience, right? And it's terrible as a platform or ops engineer because now I'm feeling hand tied. Can I actually change my tools? Can I actually have ownership over what I'm doing? So that's where I start to say like it's going to look a lot like that because I think the contract and the module like intention is really good.
Yep.
It is different, and I can show you how it becomes an API where there's actually independence there between the two when you use Kratix to run to expose those modules to your users or whatever infrastructure is good.
Yeah. And then, Abby, I got another question for you. So we kind of broke down how the S3 bucket came through and was created through Terraform and such. But what about something like a Kubernetes deployment? What does that look like from the backstage / Kratix side of the house and how that is constructed? What's supporting that new application that you just created?
Yeah, it's a perfect question. So what that's doing is it's doing the same thing where so Kratix works in a way where it's able to manage whatever type of infrastructure, whatever type of code, whatever type of documents, whether that be declarative documents or imperative commands like API calls that you want to manage. And so what I'll do is I'll quickly show over, go into present mode here with my fancy Miro slides. What Kratix tries to do is create this experience where a request can come into the platform from any interface that you want to drive it from. So whether that be from a kubectl command, because we do run on top of Kubernetes, or from a custom CLI you might create, from a backstage portal, from anything that you want to do. And at the end of the day, what Kratix does is it orchestrates whatever backends you're needing to manage. And so those might be split up by things like the environment that you have. So you might have many different Kubernetes clusters all sort of operating for different reasons and values, and you want to operate those. And you might also have different backends that are more code focused. So a Terraform Enterprise or a GitHub backend or something along those lines. The way that works, actually, I'm going to go to a different slide here really quick.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you go out of order.
No. You act like I have this down pat there, Jared. Don't worry. So the way that works inside of it is that Kratix has this concept of promises, which I'll go back and explain a bit more. And those promises run commands on or workflows that have been defined per request. So the operations engineers and the people who understand what needs to be on offer from the platform can write their rules, their expectations, their infrastructure as code, declarative or imperative, into containers that run in a workflow. And that workflow has two different strategies that you can use at any time as a creator of it. You can use the imperative strategy, which would be running an API command. That's how we made that request out to Slack, right? We said, Slack API, send this over to this channel with this information. Thank you. but it can also do declarative code. And so you were asking, how does this work in Kubernetes? Well, we all here are big fans of GitOps. So ideally, you would be using GitOps and declarative code here to manage our Kubernetes deployments. And so at the end of the workflow, as you're doing your jobs, you're going to be collecting up those documents that need to be deployed. And what Kratix does for you is it allows you to take those documents and write them to a state store based on rules that you've defined. Hey, your user asked for a dev environment. Okay, we're going to write that to the state store location that the dev environment is watching. And by watching, I mean that. You have a GitOps agent inside your cluster or inside your SaaS product of Terraform Enterprise or inside of wherever it is that can watch those state stores. And so, but you can also use declarative code without GitOps. Like that's what you saw me doing with the GitHub action. So I had GitHub actions running on commit, and that's, not quite declare, it's a middle ground between like declarative and imperative. So,
Sure.
yeah, that's the pattern basically, is that there's these workflows that execute API calls, but also manage declarative code into the correct state stores that can then be watched and applied to wherever you need to be applied to.
Awesome. Thank you.
And how far down the stack do you guys, like internally, for example? I imagine you guys dog food Kratix at Kratix. You're running your platform on top of your platform. How far down the stack do you go with Kratix? Does it start from an empty Kubernetes cluster and you're building up promises to establish Argo CD? You're building up promises to connect Argo CD to your Git repositories, and all of that type of orchestration is just promise-oriented implementations, contractually bound. Is that like all the way down the stack from the empty cluster on up is the space that you use Kratix?
Fred, you got to let me do the plug, not you. No, but seriously, honestly, so yes, we do obviously dog food our own work, and we use Kratix promises for things all the time, and we do that for composition. I'm going to show that next. But whether or not something needs to be a promise is in large part defined by if something needs to be provided as a service to someone else.
Gotcha.
And or if it needs to be managed across your fleet. So if you have a single instance of something that no one else needs to get access to ever, and there's only ever a single instance, I wouldn't recommend, or I wouldn't push for a promise in that scenario. You might get so comfortable with promises, you want everything to be promises, and we'll be best of friends. But the things that promises do really well is that they allow for that as a service experience, because the promise structure is this, which is what we think are the most important criteria for providing something as a service. You need a way to make that request with a contract. That's your API. You need a way for your business to be able to support that, at the base level, the dependencies. And this means, you already have a running service that people are asking for pieces of, right? So we talked about offline here earlier, Vault is a really good example of where people often try namespace requests. And so you'll have a running Vault, that would be your dependency. Your API would be how someone would ask for a namespace within Vault. And your workflow would be how you manage the business processes around going from a request to a usable space within Vault for that user, which would include the technical implementations for Vault, as well as the business requirements such as manual sign-off and anything else that you might have. And then finally, the destination rules is how we manage that scheduling across what might be a complex ecosystem of infrastructure and possible locations. So
right on. And dependencies, just so I have a clear understanding of that part, is that a reference to a Kratix object that's in the space, or would it be more like a script that you could run to confirm that there's a vault there, or both, or either?
Can be both or either, can be neither. So this is where being a framework, one of the hardest things for people to grasp is how flexible it can be. But that ability to set up your work ahead of time, but have it all encapsulated within the promise, is what a lot of people really like. That's maybe our default experience, is that people want to be able to manage the setup and the offering of it all in one place, so that they don't get disjointed between things. But there are a lot of people out there that have a lot of infrastructure they're already running, and they don't want to rewrite it. And I don't want them to rewrite it. I want them to move forward, not backwards, with their infrastructure, right? And with their offerings. And in those cases, just saying, hey, I need to be able to access this running instance of something. I can do that on this IP address or URL or whatever. And I need to validate some things about it before I can consider that promise ready to serve users.
Right.
That can also be done in your dependencies. So, yeah.
Really neat. Really neat.
Yeah. So you were bringing up the idea of like, use cases. I said the second use case is when you have something deployed in many places and you want to manage it more centrally or be more aware of it. And I think that brings up the second character I would bring into the kind of platform building thing. So we've talked about the app devs having their pretty portals. Gosh, they're such princesses. And then you've got your, and they get their Slack messages and all that. But now we have our ops engineers, and they're the ones that get the phone calls in the middle of the night with the security patch issues and with the downtimes and all these things that they have to worry about. They're the capability owners, the ones who actually provide Vault and CI/CD pipelines and all these things that are the real workhorses of the company. I have a pretty lightweight example here that I can showcase. But one of the biggest challenges for me when I was in ops is even just knowing where my problems are,
Right.
let alone trying to get people to actually fix them for me, because I don't have access to the environment or the code, or I need to PR into their repo or whatever, because everything's gone, forked out from my Terraform modules. With Kratix, everything's just by default in your catalog. So I can come in here and I can use the kubectl command line to get, for example, I can go get what's available. I can go get my promises, but I can also go get the requests that got made to those promises. So I can go get the deployments, the Kratix deployments, not Kubernetes ones. And I can see all of my deployments that have gone out, and I can see information about them. And I can decide, as the author of this thing as a service, I can determine what shows up in this view when I want to see it. And one of the things I care about is, are they being compliant? Now I can programmatically collect this stuff, right? Because it's all just in the status of a Kubernetes object. But I can also visually get a read on it. And I can see that we have some warnings. Now, we were a bit ad hoc, early stage startup, let's imagine, and we kind of let people do whatever they wanted. And then we turned around, we're like, wow, everyone's getting upset about resiliency, but they're also only deploying one replica of their application. And to save money, we're on spot instances, and that is just a recipe for disaster. We need people to have more than one replica so that we can have a resilient application in our platform, right? That's me as the ops person. I've made that decision. It shouldn't affect them. It should be able to be run through. Do I need to now go off and ask all of them to update, or can I update that? Is that something that is actually, kind of fundamental to the ownership model of my side of this contract, of this API? And so what I can do actually is I can apply a new promise. If I'm in the right place, kubectl apply, and I'm going to apply the the deployment promise, and I'm going to do the HA version of it. And so this is just, I have this locally, but you can see it's not putting in a new promise, it's just configuring it. And what that's doing is that is actually, I should put that on a watch, sorry, give me one sec. What that's doing is that is actually going through and it is checking all of the deployments to verify if they are up to the new requirements that I've given. And you can start to see that filter through the system. So we're going to see Abby and Mobile and Zeno all get more deployments because they're all going to have been told that one isn't sufficient. We need two at least. And I was able to do that with a single command and have that roll out. Here they start coming. So we've got Zeno coming in, and all this is eventual, right? It's a reconciliation loop. So you just have to bear with me here. But yeah, so it starts to roll out. I've got now a second Abby, a second Mobile, and I've got all those. And so if I now rerun that get on the deployments, I've got all but one. Zeno hasn't updated yet that it knows that it's more than one. But I now have updated all my compliance requirements with a single command.
That's really neat.
That's awesome.
What?
Yeah.
I want that.
So in practice, how far do you go with that as a Kratix practitioner? Like I could see how, you know, I can't even come up with a good example on the fly, but it feels a little risky to just like be like, there's a new rule here. Now just propagate. Like are there trouble spots that you have to watch out for in terms of applying policy like that?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it, in my opinion. So the first side is uh, if I want to roll this out, how can I do it in a trusted way? So there's lots of like kind of existing ideas here that you can lean on. So canary deployments, rollbacks if you don't, roll out to a certain percentage of them and make sure they come back. Only roll out to this labeled thing and then go to the next label and so on and so forth. So all those deployment strategies are things that you can configure. Right. And you can decide, your safety, your risk tolerance for that rollout.
Right.
So that's the first thing. That's just being a good operator. But the second thing is the thing about building a good product. And this is where you have to define your ownership line. And that ownership line is going to live somewhere in that promise definition. And it's going to be pretty much implicitly that API you set. So I'll give you an example. This is my go-to example. So we can think of a new one, so it's not all canned later if you want. But my go-to example is database versions. As an application developer, I care deeply about what version I'm on, so I can know what query I can use and what the features are that I can have. But I couldn't care at all about minor and patch, because those aren't the things that are going to break my app, and so on. And as an operator, I'm like, I will not touch your major version upgrade without you giving me a test environment that I can validate, a test environment and test suite that validates that your application can still speak the new version's query language and all that.
Right.
So you can set that in your contract about that being your line. You can provide to the application developer the option of setting their major version of their database, or maybe even their major and minor.
Right.
But you cannot give them the option to manage their patch version. And all of a sudden, that is implicitly saying, I can't depend on an application developer, the user of this thing, to upgrade patches. So I'm not even giving them that option, right? And so that's my ownership now. I'm in charge of, if a patch comes in that has a security flaw, whatever, or it fixes a security flaw, I can roll that out and I can do so safely. And as an operator, I better know what safely means, how I can roll that out to lower environments and lower risk applications and do rollbacks if needed and all that. So operational skill sets don't go anywhere in the world of platform engineering and as a service and with Kratix. You still need all those skills. It's just how you package them to make them more maintainable, more scalable, and easier to use.
And the line of defining that barrier, that wall, is defined stately in that promise. It's
exactly
real neat.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So then I guess the last thing I'll show is the third category of, I think, people that are involved in this stuff. And this is where, again, I have some ideas about platforms that I think are really important. I think, or that I care deeply about, which is that platforms are there to enable the application developers to get what they need, how they need it, where they need it, when they need it, easily, and to enable the operations and infrastructure experts who might be the same human, just with a different hat on, to be clear. But those experts to be able to plug in their expertise into the scalable framework. But the platform is about enabling that connection. It's not, the platform is more than just I write infrastructure. It's also, how do I create that connection? And what we're really talking about here is that, I'll give an example here, because I haven't installed it yet. Here we were in Backstage, and I was showcasing how you can create your bucket, you can create your deployment, you can connect the two up manually, but it's kind of a bad experience. As a platform, what I want to offer as a platform engineer is I want to offer a really easy way to make better experiences possible. And the thing about promises is, because they encapsulate something as a service, they can be composed and decomposed into bigger and smaller offerings. So this deployment plus bucket is probably pretty common to be maybe defined as an application.
Yep.
And so if I wanted to come over here, and I have another fancy promise here, which I can kubectl apply, which is an app as a service promise. And when I apply that, it's going to do some dependency setup. So if I go check out my pods again, I can see a configure pod coming up, getting that all ready to go, making sure everything's all sorted. And what I can do then is, there it goes. I can go get my promises again, and I can see that it's available and happy. So dependencies were set up properly. And with magic, I've not touched anything else. When I go to promises now, promises. Oh, I didn't touch it, and now it's not there. Hang on. It should come in, but I've lost my deployment promise as well. It might just take a second because. Give it a second, but it should automatically populate into that interface. So we'll give that a second to go. But we've got the ability to make that request through CLI first as that configuration is happening. And then all of a sudden, the API for that app is there it goes. See, I knew it should come. That API for that app incorporates what is the right level of abstraction for that request. So people who need a really detailed bucket might need to go in and set their encryption and go do a bucket directly. But most people are like, I need blob store, please.
Right.
That's all I got. That's all I got. And so if I do like a K-ray bucket, like an application here in the default namespace, and go to the next, all of a sudden, my only option when it comes to buckets is, do I have one?
Right.
Or not? Cool.
That's
cool. Awesome. And now I can go review and I can go create. And this was able to be done by taking existing promises, composing them up together, because the framework provides that consistent interface, that consistent shape that allows for that kind of composability. And it's so worth showing how that sort of works. You sort of have these, or actually I'll do the composable one first. The compound promise at the end of the day is just a normal promise that ends up making requests to other promises. So that whole experience of running through a workflow, getting declarative code, running API commands, doing all of those things still happens. And so when I need to make an update to deployments, I don't have to go make an update to the app, the deployments that were created through the app requests and the deployments created through the deployment request, because I update deployments and it just rolls out to where deployments have been requested, regardless of, if it was through what we call a compound promise, this larger promise, or through a more direct method. So really giving that sort of day two operations aspect a really good kind of story and experience.
Yeah, 100%.
The compound promises, since that's the first time you're using that, my brain kind of went toward how app of apps kind of work. It's like a promise of promises, and you have the ability to kind of layer those and synchronize them in a way that works for extensibility to bigger and more robust promises. Yep,
exactly. So, and you can do things where you can put dependencies on them. So we are built in such a way that if you are in a really modern environment where you're working completely with eventual consistency and reconciliation loops, and things are healthy, until they're or they are just waiting until they're healthy kind of thing, everything can be fired at the same time. But we're also working with some of the largest banks in the world right now, and they aren't in that environment for all of their offerings, right? And they need to be able to do manual approvals. And they need to say that they need to make sure that they have something standing before something else comes up, else everything falls over. And you're able to do that sort of ordered thing as well. And the cool part is it's all then codified in a single location. So when that order changes, your application developers, your users don't have to care, but your ops team might be unleashed from some of that complexity when they've improved on that in their environment. And that's that contract, that API that lets those two sides work independently and evolve independently. So
right on. That's really well designed.
Thank you.
And if I can ask you, Abby, just for the members of our audience that are already familiar with Kubefirst, how would you recommend to our audience that they start using? I know you're not like necessarily a pro Kubefirst user or anything, but you're familiar enough with the platform.
I try to be.
I know you're such a power user. That was rude. How would you recommend, like, if somebody went through and did like a Kubefirst installation, and wanted we don't really get into the business at all beyond that line of the platform's provisioning. From there, our project's opinion is don't go any further. That's the application team's responsibility. There's a platform team involved. They have to define the rules of the business. They have to establish what those contracts are. And it seems like that's the spot where Kratix comes into the mix. It's when you're starting to establish that as a service model for your software developers, if you want the consistency that we've been seeing on screen here of being able to put these things together, establish well-formed contracts, get it all stateful, be able to define that line of what part is on the ownership of the platform team, what part is on the responsibility of the development team. That feels like a really good way to use Kratix on the Kubefirst platform. Would you recommend any other thoughts that you might want to throw into that pitch?
I think it's too perfect is really what I say. So I gave a talk I'm really excited about at the State of Open conference in London, where I was showing this interaction. So if you are interested, there's a great demo that's there. I can help you out with the code associated with it as well if you reach out to me. But basically, I think we were one of your first wave of products inside of your marketplace for Kubefirst, because right from the beginning, we saw that intersection of that opportunity there for users to really thrive. And I think that the reason I'm so excited about it is because of this concept of a state store that Kratix uses, right? We at Syntasso care as deeply about GitOps as you all do. Well, maybe not. You all do. You do really care about GitOps, but we do care deeply about GitOps and think it's a really great strategy when it can be applied, right? And so we have this state store as sort of a core component of how Kratix runs. Well, you all offer two amazing state stores right off the bat. You automatically have a Git repository set up for users to be able to own these things, and you have a Minio, which is an S3 lookalike kind of state store that you can use. So when you install Kratix through the Kubefirst marketplace, we automatically configure Kratix to speak to both of those locations. Now, you can choose what gets written where and into what directories within there, but we carve off a little section of those two places. We have a Kratix directory in the repo and a Kratix directory inside Minio that will be where you can write your state to. So it really just fits like a glove, the ability to do that. So, yeah.
Geez, that's super neat.
Yeah.
Can we end the show any better than that? I don't know. That was a fantastic apex to the live stream.
Well, I want to hear it. So I've been, you took away my power user there status for a little while, which I'm gonna earn back. But I have been sniffing around all the things going on Kubefirst land, and there were some really fun articles and things recently. And so I feel like I want to know what's been going on your side of this partnership and joy that we have together.
Jeez, thank you for asking. Things are great at Kubefirst right now. We have so much going on, and if you're sniffing around, it's not going to be too hard to figure out that we've got just a whole bunch of activity going on. We've got some announcements coming up. I'm going to be a little bit tight-lipped about it, but we're certainly growing, which has been phenomenal. That we've sort of felt like that the number of human resources on the project has been our biggest problem since Jared and I were working on this thing nights and weekends trying to figure out where money comes from. And so,
Trees, right? Trees.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. But no, we've been growing out the team. We've got some new products that are very close to announcement. They're still stealth, but they are very exciting to us. And sort of the everyday mantra of Kubefirst remains the same. But we've got new spaces that we get to play in. We've got new tricks up our sleeve. We've got new industrial areas that we get to focus on. And I think in September, our plan is to just start making a whole bunch of announcements, including, this K-Ray logo that we love so dearly. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe some friends, maybe some shifts. We're not quite sure exactly what it's going to be. I hope everybody will stay tuned. But September is going to be a huge month for us.
You're just be on the beach for the next couple of months, right? The next month or two before September, right?
Yeah.
Getting a tan, just hanging out.
That's the right way to play. That's what I should do. So we're but just the overall spirit of Kubefirst at the shop, really since our most recent acquisition, has just been fire, and it's so exciting. And we've got the juice that we need to do what we've always dreamt of doing. So it's a really exciting time for the project. I hope everyone will stay tuned for our announcements in September.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just to be clear, Kubefirst not going away. So people that are using Kubefirst right now, don't be afraid. I know we talk about potential new product and like a lot of things happening. Kubefirst will continue to be here.
100%.
It's an amazing product, and you got a rare side of my cat on his 2 feet, which is like she's adorable when she does that. And I never able to like take a picture or video, and now I have it.
Put it in the books. We've got that one forever, Fred. That was nice timing.
Yeah, and good question, Abby. It's the first time I'm seeing John kind of like not exactly knowing what to say. It's like, hey, like it's nice, things are coming. Like it's the first time I see that, which is also a rare sight. Like my cat's going on 2 feet. That was interesting. Thanks for sharing about the products. That was amazing. Hopefully, people right after the show, you go try Kratix, and magic's gonna happen. So go on. There's Kratix. Actually, you can go on Syntasso. Sorry, I don't know why I always put a hi there. Syntasso.io. There's the blog that have a lot of interesting contents. Obviously, Kratix repo. I shared those links during the show, but I just wanted to share them again at the end. And you know what? You've seen Abby now. You know her. It's like if you've known her already for years. You can contact her on Twitter if you have any question, anything. She is as friendly as she looks like in the show. So on that note, folks, maybe you missed that, maybe not. But I have a question for you.
Love this part.
Where
we need it, Fred.
Where did the parallel function wash its ends?
Where did the parallel function wash its hands? I got nothing.
No.
You got nothing.
I don't have enough Fred knowledge here. No.
Let's do it.
A sink.
Thank you, Fred. I appreciate you, buddy. That was actually a really good one.
I'm back. So with that beautiful end of the show, we are back on a regular schedule with the live stream. So we're going to see everyone and each of you and more people maybe in 2 weeks for the next show. On that note, thanks, Abby, for being on the show for the second time. Always a pleasure to have you do some knowledge bomb drop and like just sharing your expertise and your passion about everything tech with us. Always nice. Jared, you're a little bit quiet today, but it was still a pleasure to see you because usually I'm stuck along with John. So it was nice to have like another friendly face with me. And John, have a good day.
Thank you for having me. I will come back anytime you're willing to have me. It's lovely to see you all. So,
Abby, it's truly always a pleasure. Everybody follow Abby. She's one of the rare people in the industry that I watch regularly and never have anything to talk crap about. She's always on point.
That sounds like a challenge.
I mean, I'll keep watching, so good luck out there. But Abby, thank you for coming on the show, for real. It's been great having you.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for joining us live. Thanks also people for watching the recording. And you know what? We're doing those every 2 weeks. Today was the 40th show we had. We did 40 live stream. So yeah, I guess it's I was not good on this one. I need to put this one. Yeah, I think it's a good job in itself. On that note, we have a couple of nice shows coming up that are already scheduled, but always open to suggestions about like topics you would like us to talk about when it comes to cloud native, Kubernetes, GitOps, but also if there is any technologies out there that you think people watching the show deserve some more explanation, some demos, some more context around those, or you yourself would like to know more about those, let us know. Let me know. Ping me. I'm going to be more than happy to find a guest that have the expertise if we don't have it. Because at the end of the day, we are having fun doing that, but it's for the people watching it, is to help people educate yourself about different technology and hopefully being more successful at your job or whatever that means to you. So on that note, I'll stop talking. I think that's the end of the show.
Let's get out of here.
And see you in 2 weeks.
See ya.
Yeah.